What topics do you speak on? And then who is usually your audience?
It all began my sophomore year of high school. I went to a talent competition, and I wanted to be an actor slash model. You know, it was right after I got cut from the basketball team, so I was like, all right, I'm going to do this now. And I did a George W. Bush impersonation on one of the nights. And after I did it, it went over really well, and I got an opportunity to do it again for the big, like the finale. And then I did it again, and then did more time, more jokes, and I ended up winning. And after that, now I'm like, oh great, now I got to be a comedian. I was like, man, they don't make much money. And so, I'm thinking that. I'm like, oh man. And so I ended up putting that video on YouTube. My dad marketed it like a good father should. He'd send it to everybody, and it happened to fall into the email of a gentleman named Eric Swanson, and he owns a seminar company, a Universal Seminars, and he was brought up by Brian Tracy. And so he has seminars across the country, and he just liked me. And so he said, can you come on my stages and do the George W. Bush impersonations? And I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I got you, man. And so I was like, sure. And I started doing it. And after a while, I was like, you know what? I like doing the George Bush, but I really want to see if I can be myself on stage and not cover myself up with an impression. Because everyone saw me only as an impression. I was like, all right, I want to be who I am as well. I love doing impressions, but let me get to my heart. So my senior year of high school, he finally said, all right, well, you have 20 minutes to speak. Make sure you do your George Bush in the beginning, but then you can take off your cowboy hat and you can talk about what you want to talk about. And what I chose with my parent, my dad and I wrote a speech basically upon there's a dilemma, and I want to be a voice, like a vanguard for my generation, speaking to the parents, to the older generation, because there is a big gap. And I want to be like that bridge to say, this is what's going on, and it's powerful. The number one reason would be children don't feel that they're being heard or spoken life into by most of their parents. And so they end up listening to the voices of their friends, or they end up listening to the voices of teachers that say, you're not smart enough, you need to get a higher grade, you're just a grade, you're just a GPA. And so when they don't feel like they're valuable or their worth or their gifts are being spoken into, they end up going off and partying, and they end up choosing the wrong friends. And yet we tell them, don't party, don't do drugs, don't hang out with the wrong people, but why not? Oh, it's bad for you. Well, I don't care. I don't really want to do anything. I have no vision. And so my speech was encouragement leads to courage, and my parents who encouraged me and spoke life into me gave me courage to do things at a young age that I normally would not be able to do. And then it was my message for that whole year was the importance of getting parents and their kids or teenagers, or even if they're young adults, to go back and reach them. Because no matter what, if a kid grows up and never felt love from his parents, it'll always burden him, no matter him or her, no matter how long or how old they get. My grandpa still cries about it when he talks about how he never heard his parents never told him I love you, and he still tears up about it. So if I see that as a 7-year-old man, I go, wow, that's big. That's a big deal. It still hurts him. So that was my message. That's the only thing I could think of, and I'm not going to talk to these business people about business because I don't know. So that was just what I've chosen that year.
What do you feel is the greatest challenge that faces young people?
Probably a lack of identity. It's always an identity issue. It's who am I and why am I here kind of thing. And that happens, I've noticed, and I'm not trying to sound like this Mr. Expert who's been researching it. I'm just, from the people that my friends and my colleagues and acquaintances around me, especially going into college, they're either going to college because their parents told them to, or will pave the way, or whatever, or just because it's the right thing to do in their mind, yet they have no idea what they want to do afterwards, and they don't know who they are. And so the biggest challenge is discovering who they really are. And there's so many different ways of people have all these different solutions of doing that, and it's just a result of experiences. But investing in, I think a big one would be investing in yourself, because sometimes I notice that especially with like teenage girls, they get so caught up in this, like, for example, a band like my little sister, who's 14 or 15, get caught up in One Direction, or these boy bands, or guys get caught up in these sports and their favorite sports characters, and I'm a big fan of those too, obviously the sports, but they get so caught up in those celebrities, or they get so caught up in maybe trying to be popular, that they're thinking about pleasing other people and thinking about other people and, you know, bands, and spending all their time looking at YouTube videos of their favorite athletes or whatever it may be, that they don't even know who they are anymore. They've spent so much time thinking and trying to be somebody else that they don't know who they are anymore. And the only way you can know who you are is to get actually alone with yourself and have a reality check. And sometimes some people tell me that the hardest thing that they have to face is when they're laying in bed at night and it's silent, because they have to hear their own thoughts. And that's really kind of scary to me. I'm like, man, if you can't listen to your own thoughts without being afraid, then you don't know who you are. And, you know, girls will date guys just because they don't know who they are, and guys will go after girls and just because they don't know who they are, and it's all of identity issue. And it's just we always try to, you know, cut off the what's it called, symptoms, as opposed to getting to the source. You know, the symptoms, whether it's, like I said earlier, drugs or alcohol or partying or bad relationships or wrong choices, but it's all from a root, and it's just not knowing who you are. And I'm still learning that process myself of who I really am, and every day we learn bit by bit, but it's important to start young as opposed to saying I'll figure it out later.